call this February 25th City Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please read the roll?
Councilmember Gregg.
Here.
Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember McBride.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell. Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory. Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings. Councilmember Tinkler. Councilmember Bowden. Councilmember Appel. Councilmember Parker. Mayor Cogswell.
Here. I'd now like to call on Councilmember Appel to give the invocation and lead everybody in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Prayer for peace. May we merit to bring about the day when war and bloodshed cease, and a great peace embraces the whole universe. No nation will lift up a sword to another, and the art of war will no longer be studied. May we live to see the leaders of all nations inspired to do good with their peoples and with all other peoples of the world, bringing about the fulfillment of scriptural blessing. I will bring peace to the earth, and you will lie down with no one to terrify you. And I will bring calm to all vicious creatures on earth, and the sword will no longer pass in your land. Let knowledge fill the earth as water fills the ocean, and let all people of all ethnicities, races, beliefs, genders, and orientations enjoy true equality, security, safety, and livelihood, in a true spirit of coexistence and cooperation. And let us say, amen.
Okay, tonight we have two very special proclamations, both honoring locals. I'm going to start with a proclamation requested by Councilman Appel for our newly appointed Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent. Whereas Charleston is proud to recognize its citizens whose achievements bring honor to our community. And whereas Scott Bessent, a South Carolina native and Charleston resident, has shown dedication and leadership in public service and finance. Whereas on January 28, 2025, Scott Bessent was sworn in as the 79th Secretary of Treasury of the United States, overseeing the nation's economic policies, financial stability, and national security. And whereas with 40 years in global investment management, Mr. Bessent has worked with leaders worldwide and is recognized as a specialist in currency and fixed income. And whereas he has served as CEO and CIO of Key Square Capital Management, CIO of Soros Fund Management, and as an adjunct professor at Yale University. And whereas his family has contributed to the agriculture, publishing, and hospitality sectors, and he has supported charitable initiatives such as the McLeod Rehabilitation Center at the Shriners Children's Hospital in Greenville, South Carolina. And whereas Mr. Bessent has served on boards, supported financial literacy programs, and maintained strong ties to Charleston, where he and his family are members of the French Huguenot Church. Now, therefore, I, William S. Cogswell, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim tomorrow, February 26, 2025, as Scott Bessent Day. Thank you. Next up, we have a very special person that has joined us here today. And if I could do the Eagles war cry, I would do it. But I'm going to spare you all that. But Mr. Brett Toth is here with us today at the request. Toth, I knew that. I was seeing if he would correct me. I would see if he would correct me. But if you would please join me up on stage, and Councilman Shealy, who put this proclamation together. If y'all would come on up. Whereas Brett Toth, a native of Charleston, South Carolina, has distinguished himself as an exceptional athlete, scholar, and service member. And whereas Brett grew up in Charleston and attended preschool academy on Wapu Road before graduating West Ashley High School, where he developed his talents, character, and work ethic. And whereas Brett was appointed to the United States Military Academy at West Point, where he played as an offensive lineman for the Army Black Knights, earned his degree in nuclear engineering, And whereas Brett was then commissioned as a first lieutenant in the United States Army. And whereas in an historic and unique opportunity, Brett was granted a waiver by the United States Army to pursue his dream of playing in the National Football League while continuing to serve as an active duty soldier. And whereas Brett has excelled as an offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, showcasing his remarkable talent, perseverance, and dedication to excellence on and off the field. And whereas Brett and the Philadelphia Eagles have won Super Bowl 59 against the Kansas City Chiefs, bringing pride to Charleston, West Ashley, and the entire Low Country. And whereas Brett's story serves as an inspiration to young athletes, students, and service members, proving that hard work, resilience, and commitment to both country and passion can lead to extraordinary achievements. Now, therefore, I, William S. Cogswell, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim today, February 25th, 2025, as Brett Toth Day.
Hey, man, you want to say something? Okay. Huh?
Yeah. Picture speak first. Oh, no. Oh, picture. Okay. I am. We got to get the photos right. Perfect. Are you going first?
It doesn't matter.
I'd first like to apologize for my appearance up here in the midst of all the chaos. Sometimes you rush a 2-year-old out the house and you forget your coat at home, right next to your class ring. So
I would let you mine, but I don't.
I'd like to begin by extending a thank you to Mayor Cogswell, Councilman Shealy as well, my family, everyone in attendance in the city of Charleston for providing me the opportunity to be here today, along with the countless opportunities that molded me into the man that stands before you. To be recognized by the city that raised me is truly an achievement of a lifetime. I'm indebted to the countless teachers, coaches, and friends that impacted me along my journey from West Ashley to West Point and finally to the NFL. Today serves as a testament to the hard work and dedication of my parents for raising 3 hard-headed kids. Despite their near limitless patience, they had finally met their match with me being the third, gave up, and shipped me off to basic training. Jokes on them because the Army grew tired of me as well and realized I'd be better utilized on a football field. When Councilman Shealy first contacted me, I did not know how to articulate the privilege that I felt. You would think such recognition would come with a sense of validation or sort of pride in my hard work being acknowledged. That never dawned on me. After hours of contemplation, it became abundantly clear that today serves as recognition for the persistence and sacrifice of the amazing teams I've been a part of. Whether it be the countless hours spent with my classmates in the labs of the physics department at West Point, or the grueling days of summer on the grid squares with the offensive line in Philadelphia, it is a support system that truly makes the difference. These teams serve as prime examples that in a results-driven world, it is the process that defines you. It is not the destination that determines your worth, but rather the journey that delivered you there. What you see in front of you is by no means a finished product. I'm a work in progress that aspires every day to be a better version of myself than the day before. Only then can I be someone this city is proud of. With that being said, I'll leave you with these parting words to my wife. Amongst all your amazing qualities, it is your heart that most inspires me. Your compassion and selflessness serve as examples I can merely attempt to emulate. To my parents, I hope I've reflected the morals you instilled in me and continue to make our family proud. To my siblings, y'all were the examples I chased when growing up. To my son, your future is filled with infinite possibility. I hope my achievements serve as a mere starting point for what you can accomplish in years to come. And to the city of Charleston, I leave you with an immense amount of gratitude in my heart and a few Philly things. Continue to keep the main thing the main thing. Go Birds, and let's do it again next year. Like a paper back to college.
Proud. I don't want to be proud. I want to be proud. Now you kind of showed me up, man. I don't know.
Well, it only happens once.
Well, I don't know. Next year, baby. Next year. Definitely a tough act to follow. Right, right. What's your district? All right. Moving along, after that incredible talk, we are now moving into public hearings. We have 6 public hearings tonight. I believe that's correct. Christopher Morgan, of course, will present first. Ask everybody to hold their questions until the end after he's gone through all 6 of them. And then we'll call it up for a vote.
Okay, can you all hear me? Is this working right? Okay, great. All right, we have 6 recent annexations and getting those zoned. So just to go through these super fast, we have 1761 Savage Road in West Ashley, which would come in the city as SR2, and there's an image of it. There's the property. That was recommended by the Planning Commission for approval. We have 1612 Poinsettia Road in West Ashley, which would come in the city as SR2 also. Here is the property there. That was recommended for approval. We have 206 Nellyfield Creek Drive in the Cainhoy Peninsula. That would come in as SR6, which matches other parcels that have come into the city in that neighborhood and based on lot size. And there's an image of property and recommended for approval. And then we have 913 Trent Street in West Ashley coming in as SR1. There's an image of property and approval by PC. And then we have 2406 Double Oak Road in West Ashley coming in as SR1 as well. And there's an image of property and recommended for approval. And finally, 171 Clark Avenue on James Island coming in the city as SR1. We have an image of the property there, and Planning Commission recommended approval as well.
And
Public comment?
yes, sir. I believe we have 2 people signed up. This is just for the public hearings. I think we had some citizens sign up for citizens participation later, but I believe we have 2.
Okay. Let's give them a minute and a half.
All
Call
right.
the first person.
Anthony G. Bryant.
It's up to high. Anthony G. Bryant, President AG Bryant Group Inc. And I want to talk in terms of these annexations right now, because I was at community development meeting. This is not germane at all. This is about annexation, adding to the plan. And when you add to the plan, then, you know, I mean, what are they gonna bring to the table, right? Existing residents in this community, based upon what I saw at community development meeting, existing residents in the community, I mean, I mean, we annexing people, are they paying their fair share? It's just like planned developments. You know, are they paying their fair share? Because what I saw in the community development meeting was like a ghetto being proposed out of Europe, right? It was like a European ghetto, right? And I couldn't believe that Charleston's the #1 city in tourism around the world, and we shot out of community development a European ghetto, right? And I could not believe in the longest in my life living in Charleston that we would put a group of men together in one area exposing the disability lawsuits and all kind of lawsuits you get exposed to, all kind of other lawsuits. And this is meritocracy and this new administration, meritocracy. Well, be some meritocracy lawsuits too. We don't even know what that means. So at the end of the day, we have to really look clearly at what we're doing in terms of annexations, plan developments, and all this other stuff got to
Time.
cover their bet.
Mohammed Idris.
This picture shows the man who saved America, 1976. Imam Warstein Muhammad, the son of Elijah Muhammad. Before he came in office, I had thought all Europeans were devils. But when he came in, he said, no, that's not true. He said, all Europeans are not devils and all African Americans is not good. We have evil people among each other. I voted for Carswell because I thought he believed in God. I came to find out that he do not believe in God. He said he cannot help Jews, Christian, and Muslim. And I know that's a lie because I see them recognize a group a couple of months ago of all different religions. I'm saying this in front of everyone. With the help of God, I'm gonna fight Carswell until he keep his promise. Thank you.
And those are the only speakers we had signed up. Was there anyone else who needed to speak under public hearings?
Next one. Any comments from council members? Any questions regarding the annexations? The motion?
I'll move take 1 through 6 together and their approval.
We have a motion to take 1 through 6 and to approve together, properly made and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, then all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, now we are on to meeting minutes, approval of the minutes from February 11th. We have a motion probably seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We're now on to citizens' participation.
We have
This is limited to 30 minutes. Madam Clerk, how many people do we have signed up?
11.
11. Okay, we will give everybody a minute and a half. And again, citizens' participation, we do expect you all, you're here to be heard. But please keep in mind the rules of decorum. You are not to direct your comments to any council members. This is not a question and answer. We ask you to just simply be respectful and make your voices heard. And please make sure that you adhere to the time limit of 1.5 minutes. I'll give you one warning. And if you persist, then we will have you escorted from council chambers. So, Madam Clerk,
All
call
right.
the first person.
The time is 1.5 minutes. Anthony G. Bryant.
Since we annex into Berkeley County, I'm deeply concerned. Our annexation is connected to a congressperson who has a hotline, and her hotline basically says if you are a rapist, a domestic abuser, if you human trafficking, she's got a hotline number. And this is Black History Month, so lynching and rape go hand in hand. So you can't have lynching and rape without going together. So as a Black man in Charleston connected to Berkeley County through annexation, where's she gonna send it at? Where's she gonna refer it at? To Patel, the race neutral patriot? Or she gonna give it to Pam Bondi? Or who's she gonna refer it to? You can't refer it to Wilson. And if you're wrongfully accused of a said crime you did not commit, you like George Stinney, youngest man executed in South Carolina at 14 years old, allegedly dealing with a white woman. So again, we want to be real as Black men in this country about rape and being wrong. I'm not trying to be popular, but Black man's accused something he did wrong and you did it, and then you're going to burn and you know what. So that's why I'm here. Let Nancy Mason on the Citadel board meeting too, erected on Denmark Vesey's Black History Month. It was erected on Denmark Vesey. We shout out Jimmy from the Stonewall Rebellion. We shout out Nat Turner for Black History Month. We can't forget them on peanut lines either.
Time.
Have a nice Black History Month.
Muhammad Idris.
Wendy Gilliard, Robert Mitchell, and Mayor Carswell. I voted for them. The mayor hired someone to make $250,000. Another person to make $100 and something million. About 5 people, they called it the $1 million team. Mayor Carswell told me, when you see this picture here, he said, Muhammad, I know you are going to keep me in line. Well, I can say this, he's not lying, because I'm gonna be working every day to keep him to live up to what he said. Thank you.
Trisha Curry.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. As Chairwoman of the City of Charleston's Commission on Women, I just wanted to send out and share and invite all women and men to our commission. Just a brief, the Commission on Women is dedicated to assessing and addressing the needs of women in our city, ensuring their voices are heard at every leadership level. By advising the mayor, city council, and community organizations, we aim to inform policy decisions that promote equal rights and opportunities. Through education, outreach, and collaboration, we empower women to achieve self-sufficiency and self-esteem. We actively work toward a more inclusive and equitable city by recommending programs and ordinances. Our commitment is to foster partnerships, advocate for necessary changes, and continuously support initiatives that improve women's lives in our community. We meet the 4th Monday at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Chloe Dempsey. Linda Horton.
Hi, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm speaking on behalf of Johns Island, and when you say River Road, I think safety. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Lived on Johns Island for the last 17 years, and in that time frame, there have been over 16 developments built on River Road alone that I counted. I'm sure there's many more. The other issue is not just the school, it's River Road, and the traffic and the accidents that occur on River Road are almost a daily event. I alone have come upon 6 accidents in the last year. I'm a registered nurse, and I was able to help a couple of these people out of a ditch that's big enough to swallow an 18-wheeler. So please consider, not just for the school, but for River Road, for Johns Island, the traffic flow. The Bernice Robinson Road has helped the cut through. It's helped tremendously, but it's not an answer. It's a Band-Aid. Thank you.
Pam England.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Okay. I didn't know this was the forum for me to talk, but I really came to talk to you. It's nice to meet you. I don't think nobody in my area really know who you are, but it's good to see your face in person. I had a problem today. I live on housing. Your name is on the black and white signature on the paper that we received. The doors are open because it's a public building. The doors are open from Monday through Friday. You all shut it down where the tenants can only come Tuesday and Wednesday. Well, today I went to that office because I normally give them Christmas gift. Well, the manager had a gift for me and I went by today. Christmas has been gone 2 months ago. So I wasn't in a rush for the gift. But the staff do not open the doors. Today is today is the day that the door's supposed to be open to anybody that wants to come today. They don't answer the door with a doorbell ringer. Do you have your appointment? What is your problem here? That's for the public. They just staff. If they don't want to work them part-time and send them home. Keep the revenue and both something for the children. They called the police on me today because I banged on the door. That door's supposed to be open for the tenants that live there. Just as I don't have a question on Monday, that don't mean I don't have one on Thursday. And I need you to get on that ASAP because but when I need to pay my rent, they know how to open the door. You know, so
Time.
that was my grab. I don't even know if this is the phone for me
Time.
to talk. Okay. Now I see you nodding your head.
So we're going to move on to our online list. And if you're online, you can unmute yourself when I call your name by pressing *6. Brittany Pittman.
Hi, sorry, I may have accidentally signed up to speak online, I guess. All right, so my name is Brittany Pittman and I'm a resident of Johns Island. Please have traffic mitigation measures completed before the new elementary school opens. The current setup on this section of River Road is not equipped to handle the influx of traffic that will occur. This will cause increased traffic congestion on an already busy roadway and put students at risk. In addition, the other two connections to the school will go through a neighborhood that was not designed to handle the additional traffic. The main roadway in this neighborhood does not have sidewalks, and there are no traffic safety measures in place. Traffic safety and mitigation must be completed on River Road and in the Swigert's Landing neighborhood before the school opens to ensure safety of the children attending the school as well as those who live in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Christine Hansen. Michelle Bellinger. Taylor or Kyle Graves.
No, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay, this is Michelle Ballinger. Much like the two most recent folks who just commented, I live in the Swigert's Landing community, and not only as Linda mentioned with the needs that we have on River Road, which is atrocious as it stands without the school fix, but I wanted to call in and speak about specifically about Swigert's Landing. And I know Brittany mentioned this a little bit, but essentially not having sidewalks on the main roads. We don't have any speed mitigation. And these things need to get taken care of in addition to what's being done outside of the neighborhood. I did attend the traffic meeting earlier this afternoon where they mentioned that everything river, et cetera, would be taken care of, but I need to make sure that that includes those measures that are going to be done in Swigert's Landing, as two of the entrances to this school are in our neighborhood. And it's going to put our kids, our pets, et cetera, at risk if this is not addressed.
Thank you. Taylor or Kyle Graves.
So sorry, my name's Christine Hansen. You called my name before, but I didn't get off mute fast enough. May I still speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I too am a resident of Johns Island. I live in the Swigert's Landing community. And I just really want to enforce here that I'd like to be presented, I think the community of Johns Island would like to be presented with the specific traffic studies that have been, or I hope have been completed, showcasing the safety measures that are going to be put into place so that our children can get to school safely. Again, speaking like with other people, River Road is a very tight and dangerous road. And so I want to understand what traffic studies specifically and what was the data that was put together to believe that that road is a safe place for children, school buses, traffic to be flowing in and out of. And I think that we as a community really need to be able to see and understand where these traffic studies have come from and the data to put forth to make sure our kids are safe. Thank you.
All right. Taylor or Kyle Graves. Michelle Jenkins. Michelle Jenkins.
Also, Michelle Ballinger. So same person. I'd love to speak more, but I will leave it just to the one comment. Thank you.
All right. Those were all the commenters that we had. We did receive some comments online. 41 were received related to traffic concerns on Johns Island, River Road, and traffic concerns in Schweigert's Landing related to Johns Island Elementary. And 2 comments were received from Anthony Bryant, and those were sent to council in full.
Okay, that concludes citizens' participation. Appreciate the comments on Johns Island. We're taking a deep dive on that. We are committed to making sure that all the required improvements are done before the school opens. We've been meeting closely with the Charleston County School District and look forward to working with the community in the neighborhood on other improvements as well. And you have a very strong advocate, I can tell you, in Jim McBride, I assure you. Okay, now on to petitions and communications. I have 2 things just that are not on the agenda that wanted to remind everybody about April 2nd, Charleston Day up in Columbia. Sign up invitations are going out to county council members and other elected officials around the Low Country to come up there. It's I think very productive and time well spent. Also wanted to give council just a quick update on a meeting that Councilman Waring, Mitchell, Seekings, and I had today with Charleston County regarding 995. We had, I think, a very productive conversation on the potential acquisition of that site. Bottom line is, I think we'll get there or have something to bring back to you all for review. Bottom line is, I think they're committed to affordable housing or workforce housing. We're committed to affordable or workforce housing. They want to get a fair price. We're willing to pay a fair price potentially. So working through some of the details, there's some complexities regarding the site itself, some parcels that they had sold off in years past. So working through those details and hope to have something to come back first through community development, then to Ways and Means, and then for council as a whole. Anyway, just wanted to give you all a general update on that front. And moving on, we have a few appointments. We have one appointment that is made, properly second. Mr. John Slogar, I think, is here somewhere, or was here. So we have a motion to approve, probably seconded, and no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, next up on the agenda is a final presentation by Bloomberg and Associates regarding our housing goals for the city of Charleston. You all will recall this was an initiative that was started in May of 2024. It is a comprehensive study looking at all previous studies, and there have been a lot of work on housing over the years. What they were able to do is compile those previous studies along with a lot of data-driven projections on our future growth and come up with some pretty powerful recommendations for us as a city. Now, I think you all know this, but housing for me, particularly workforce housing, is perhaps, in my mind, the biggest cultural, social, and economic issue that we face over the next decade. It is something that we have to pay very close attention to if we want to maintain what we all know and love about this city, if we want to maintain affordability for the next generation and the generation thereafter. So I think this is going to provide us a very strong roadmap with achievable targets. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our very own Gianna Shaw Johnson, who will give some the initial remarks, and then Naaman with Bloomberg will wrap it up.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Mayor, I agree, and I thank you for your comments. And I thank Council for the work that they've done thus far in the affordable and workforce housing ecosystem. I would say to us, we have a lot more to do. You will see tonight, based on the quantitative and qualitative numbers that are going to be presented to you, we have some challenges ahead of us. But the city of Charleston has always arisen to challenges, and we've had the leadership in our mayors and in our council where we're not afraid to do the hard work. Now, I will just say to us, we've done some hard work over the last 9 months. We are especially appreciative to Bloomberg Associates, who have provided excellent assistance to us and our team. And so with that, before I have Naaman come up, I want to first thank the mayor, thank CD Committee of City Council, because not only did they meet during the regular CD committee meetings, but they also attended additional meetings on their own time. And so we're very appreciative of the effort and the dedication that you have exuded to this process. I also want to thank city colleagues. Literally every department in the city of Charleston leaned in. And so I commend them for that, and I thank them for their interest and their suggestions. Also want to thank our community partners who we met with across the spectrum, private sector and nonprofit, throughout the 9 months. Everyone was very flexible with their time, and so it was very important to us that we had that level of engagement and that level of feedback from those who are not only in the industry, but those outside of the industry in this process. So with that, I will ask Naaman to come up, and following that, we will also ask our CFO, Ms. Wharton, to come up and share some information with you as we go throughout this process. Naaman. And I didn't thank Naaman enough. Excellent partner, and one of the things I didn't mention, and he'll share with you a little bit more about Bloomberg Associates and Bloomberg Philanthropy, but the service that they render for communities across the country and across the world is at no charge to local government. So we got this consulting service for free. So y'all should applaud that in itself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gianna, for your kind words, and good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. It's so good to see all of you here in person today. Again, my name is Naaman Freeman. Really excited to speak with you all and present all the amazing work that Gianna and her team and the rest of the city staff have been working on over the past 9 months. I'll do a bit of an introduction for those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting with me yet. My name is Naaman Freeman again. I am with Bloomberg Associates, and how many of you all here today have heard of Bloomberg Associates or have worked with Bloomberg Associates? Okay, so a few familiar faces. Bloomberg Associates, we are the pro bono consulting arm of Mike Bloomberg's personal philanthropy, or Bloomberg Philanthropies. So what we do is we provide consulting services to mayors and to cities across the globe, both domestically and internationally, across 9 different practice areas. We really do mimic the structure of city government. Those practice areas span transportation, economic development, arts and culture, sustainability, and so on, and really cover the gamut to really help improve cities and the lives of your everyday citizens. Again, I want to harp on the fact that we are pro bono, so we do not ask mayors or cities for any contributions or funding or payment, and so we do this work, and are able to advise with open hearts and minds. With that said, I'll hop into this presentation. What we are presenting here today is a continuation of what we presented to the CD Committee of City Council over the past, I think, 9 months. We're going to cover a couple of things. One of the things that we covered more in depth at CD Committee is really kind of the background and some of the housing data, and we're going to go through a quick summary of that and talk about the gap in affordable units and then the impacts of that, right? We're going to talk a bit about the housing goals that the mayor and the city set at the end of last year and kind of brought forth to council or to the city committee. And then we're going to talk about the plan or how the city plans to implement that. And I'm going to lean on Gianna and Amy to kind of speak more to that and about the resources and programs that will help that the city will leverage to achieve these goals. And then lastly, Gianna will touch base on next steps. So should move through this pretty quickly. I will say that if you can hold any broad comments or questions until the end, but if you have any specific technical questions about what we are speaking to or what's on screen, happy to feel free to interrupt me and ask away. Mr. Mayor, shall we? All right. Is there any way that we can minimize the, or move the mouse? There we go. Perfect. Thank you. So, as you all know, Charleston has seen significant growth and increasing incomes. You'll see that the graph up here on the screen shows population growth on the right vertical index. From the left, on that left vertical index, the green and gray lines show the increase in median household income and also the median family income for a household of four. If you take into account inflation, from 2010 to 2020, there was a 22% increase in just the median household income. And then you saw another jump of 10% in the 3 years during the pandemic. So that means that the number of the people that are moving to Charleston have much higher incomes than the people who are here in Charleston. That's something that's very important to remember as we go through this. The area median income for a household of four is now well above $100,000. I live in New York City, and it's pretty close to what it is in New York City. I never expected as a Carolina boy myself that anywhere in the Carolinas would have an area median income that's close to what it is in New York City. So what does that mean? It means that what you're seeing in this slide is you're seeing a dot matrix of all of the moves in and moves out. So net moves in and moves out. You'll see the blue or greenish turquoise all on the outer parts of the region. That means that there are more moves into that area of the city than there are out of that area of the city. And you'll see in the lower peninsula, there are, it's pretty much all red, which means there are more moves out than there are moves in. So when you combine that with the previous data set that you saw on the previous screen, what it's showing is that you're seeing a lot of high income individuals with smaller household sizes moving into the center parts of the region, whereas they're pushing out a lot of the larger households and more people into the outer parts of the region. So the actual population density of the peninsula is getting smaller, while the population in the outer parts of the region is getting larger. And what that means is that the traffic is really being exacerbated. I'm sure all of you all can speak to that on a daily basis. You're seeing more people traveling into the city for jobs and for recreation. That may include tourists as well. Then you are seeing actually living very close to where they work or where they may do their daily activities or use daily amenities. This means that the housing issue is, or the transportation issue, or the traffic issue is ultimately a housing issue, right? And that's a problem because the pattern is right now the opposite of what a lot of the various planning documents and theses have put forth from across the region. As jurisdictions put together their housing plans, their planning documents, what they're pushing for is more concentrated development and additional population along, your major corridors and vehicular thoroughfares. I think that's not what you have been seeing over the past decade and a half. So the region and the city is growing, and the city needs to really increase supply and affordability to accommodate it, right? This is what we call a Skansky diagram. I think this is one of the more powerful diagrams that we have to share. And what it does is it shows households stratified by income on the left-hand side, and it leverages your AMIs or area median income and the percentages of that. And on the right-hand side, it shows the aligning available and affordable units for those incomes. And so when we say the city needs to add supply or the region needs to add supply, we're not just talking about at one segment of the population or one income segment, right? We're talking about across the board. And if you move that, if you move the camera or the video screen, there we go. Perfect. You'll see the map. This data does not just encompass the city of Charleston, but it looks at the entire region. And so what this shows is that across the region, what you're seeing is a shortage of units that are available and affordable for people at the lowest income and at the highest incomes. And this is specifically looking at rentals. We can get into kind of the for sale market later, but on the rental side of things, you don't have as many units that are affordable to people at 120% of AMI and above as there are households. And the same for people at or below 50% of AMI. You don't have nearly enough units that are affordable for people at the lowest income to inhabit, right? And here's why this is a big problem and is actually exacerbated by higher income individuals moving into the city. So what you have is you have those higher income individuals who perhaps can't afford to buy a home in this market. They end up renting. And when they rent, they'd rather not spend all of their money. So let's say you make $150,000 a year and you're moving into Charleston. You could afford a $3,000 apartment, but why would you if there's something that is $1,500 a month and it accommodates all of your needs? That apartment is what we call a naturally occurring affordable housing unit, right? And that naturally occurring affordable housing unit would have accommodated someone at a lower AMI, but is now being occupied by someone that has a higher income. And there's nothing wrong with that. In a healthy market, that should happen. I think what happens is that this is not necessarily a healthy market, and you don't have enough units at that lower AMI to accommodate all of the households who need that housing. And there are two ways to kind of address this. One is to add more supply overall and at all of the various income levels. But the second, that is absolutely a must, is to create more income restricted units at the lowest levels. That doesn't mean at 120% of AMI. It doesn't mean at 80% of AMI. It means at 50% of AMI and below. You must create units at that 50% of AMI income bracket and below so that they aren't cannibalized or being taken by people at the higher incomes. They need to be income restricted. I think this is an important point for not just the city of Charleston, but for every major city in the US. This is what they're grappling with. Yes.
The quantities, I mean, is that a monthly on the left and a annual rent on the right? Or is the 2K, 6K, 25K, what is that? Or is that popular?
Those are the number of households.
Number of households.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Or number of units.
Got it. Thank you.
Should I hold here for a second? Oh, Councilmember.
I do have a question. I don't want to jump ahead, but how do you create units at 50%?
Oh, man. So let's hold that. That's a more of a broad comment or question. I'm going to ask that you hold that one until the end. Okay.
You talked about increase the number of restricted units.
Can you use the microphone?
You were talking about increase the number of restricted units.
Right.
How do you keep them that way?
That's another good question that I'll hit on in a second. I'll make sure I hit that point for you. Any other technical questions about this slide? Okay. So I want to hit on some key takeaways from this. The region's population has increased significantly and is projected to increase. That's regardless of what anyone in this room does. People are going to continue to move down here. If my job let me, I might think about it too. The growth is led by smaller and wealthier households who have and will continue to migrate to the region, right? So you're going to see higher income people coming in and pushing those lower income people out. New households will continue to create additional demand, compete for housing with existing households, and that competition is going to push up the housing prices. And you're going to see lower income households will continue to lose out, right? And they're going to be pushed further and further out in the peninsula That has an effect on employers who are trying to find employees, their ability to get into the city, and the cost of doing business for those employers, and thus the cost of living for those of you who are using those goods and services. So that ultimately puts pressure on the traffic and the infrastructure, and like I said, increases the cost of living. So what is the city planning to do about it, right? We brought 6 housing goals to the CD committee at the end of last year. We can follow up on those 6 housing goals later if you'd like, but today I want to focus on 2, right? One is to create 3,500 more affordable or attainable homes. And to the council member's earlier point or question, what do we mean by affordable or attainable? I think what we mean by that is those that are serving people at 120% of AMI or below. They are income restricted, meaning that they are restricted to those people at those income levels, and they are affordable for the long term, meaning that they have a term of affordability that restricts the use of those units for at least 30 years. And that's important because if the city is going to be investing the dollars that we talk about a little bit later, you want to get your money's worth. You don't want to put several $100,000 into a unit and then lose it 5 or 10 years later. And I'd be remiss if I didn't add this last point. You know, we've had a lot of conversations through this exercise with city staff, with a number of stakeholders, affordable housing developers, nonprofits. And, you know, one of the things that we've continued to hear, and rightfully so, is that we need to add one last goal. And so the mayor has really pushed us to add an additional goal to those 6, and that's to make development review and permitting much more expedient, right? None of the other things can happen unless we do that. And so I wanted to kind of call that out explicitly and make sure that is included in here and make that point. Yes.
I agree with that last point. I guess I have a question. You're the consultant. So have you examined the second order effects of that in other municipalities? Meaning, like, if you make development review and permitting more efficient, while sure it opens up more housing supply, does it bring additional development in because it's a friendly place to develop, and now you have more developers competing to go build more units that then logjam our TRC process? And so I guess at the high level, yeah, it makes more sense, but what is the second order effect on that and driving additional development in the city that's not necessarily affordable housing? Thanks.
I think it's a really good question, and I want to just make a clarifying comment there. When we talk about the development review and permitting process, that is not to make things easier to cut corners, but when somebody does what they're supposed to do, and we have extremely strict regulations, I mean, from the BAR to our stormwater manual, we're talking about our process at the city. When an affordable housing developer comes in and has a project that they want to do, and there are countless examples of this, and it takes them 2 to 3 years to go through our process, that doesn't work. And so it is a delicate balance. There's no question about this. This does not mean that we are opening up the floodgates to developers and, you know, it's the Wild West and let all market rate come in and do whatever's necessary and no restrictions. But what we're seeing here is a balance, because what's happening is these developers that can afford to stay in for the long term and wait out the 3 years are ultimately getting their projects approved. And you see people moving out from the urban core into the more rural parts of the region. And again, just for clarification too, I did want to put this out there for Naaman. I'll sit down and let him finish his presentation. But we're talking about the peninsula. It's not just the lower peninsula. I mean, this is the urban core of the Tri-County up the I-26 corridor. And we've had countless COG studies and regional plans and public transportation studies that are trying to encourage higher density within the existing infrastructure of the Tri-County up the I-26 corridor. And what you see from that chart is the opposite has been occurring over the past 10 years, and that is almost entirely based on affordability. So, turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will add 2 points to that. I think, and this is building on top of what the mayor said. I think for one, in the same way that adding lanes to a highway, well, in the opposite way that adding lanes to a highway induces demand, right? So you add more lanes on a highway, that induces additional demand, you end up with more traffic. That's not exactly the way that development works, right? And so development and thus the number of, or the pipeline of units that are coming through review isn't affected by how quickly you kind of allow them through, right? I think how that's affected, it's a regional economy, it's affected by the demand to move here. And so as long as people want to move here, you're going to continue to have people wanting to put forth development applications because there's money to be made, right? And that they can create units at the price point that people want to buy them. I think the second point is that, when you unnecessarily add time to the development process, you add cost to the development process. And in our world of finance, when you have money in an account, you receive an interest payment. And when you take out a loan, you pay interest. And so every day that you do not repay that loan, you have additional interest payments. And so I think one of the things that's very important to kind of recognize is that the longer it takes for a development to go through the process, the higher the cost of creating that development. And so one of the things we talked about with CD committee in December was that prior to the pandemic, you had about almost half of the units that were sold in the city of Charleston were sold at a price point of $400,000 or below. In the past year, you've got less than, I think, half of that. So maybe less than 20% of the units that are sold in the city were sold at $400,000 or below. Right? And so more than 60, I think almost 60 to 80% are sold at $600,000 or more. So I think what that means is that as long as the market is not being served, right, by market rate developers, that means the city is going to have to do it has a bigger task or a much larger task in terms of subsidizing people who cannot afford that. And so by increasing the speed at which developments move through, you ultimately reduce the burden on the city to subsidize those households. I'll stop there. Okay. So we know the problem is measurable. We've taken the time with city staff and looked through a lot of the studies that they've done previously and expounded upon that and updated those. We know exactly what the gap is within the city of Charleston at the various AMIs, and the city has set ambitious but also reasonable goals and targets around creating affordable units at those income levels, right? And so, yes, the need at 50% of AMI at the two income levels within that are higher than what the sub-target is. But if you look on the far right, you'll see that the cost to subsidize a new unit at those income levels in a new construction building is extremely high, upwards of $450,000 at the lowest AMI level, and at 50% of AMI, upwards of $300,000 per unit, right? And so I think what is reasonable if the city is if the city can accomplish the goals that it's set and the sub-targets it's set, focusing at the lowest AMIs, but understanding that it's more reasonable for the city to set to accomplish a decent amount of those units at the middle income levels. And so going back to the point that the mayor, you have a question?
Have you seen anything in your travels around the country where small business developers, we used to have a number of small business people that would really rent to afford, it would create units to rent for the Section 8 program, okay?
Councilmember, I'm going to ask you to hold that question until the end. Thank you. So as we said, to meet these goals, there are a number of things the city is going to have to do to make that happen, right? Implementation. I think the first thing starts with the city getting out of its own way. I don't think Section Chief Tim Keene is here today, but I know he's coming back to council to speak about a little bit about what I'm going to speak to today. But as of September, there were about 18,000 total units in process under the city, right? Our goals were 7,500 total units, 3,500 units that were affordable. And I think if you were just to move through the units that were in progress, 12,000 of which are under TRC review, and about a little shy of 4,000 of which have active permits as of September, you would accomplish the goals that the city has already set, right? So the city has to get out of its own way and start moving development forward. And so doing this is not just going to require the city to get out of its own way, but it's going to require collaboration across a number of regional stakeholders. That means the public sector, or the city of Charleston. It means the quasi-public sector, which includes a number of entities and people here today, institutions, the housing authority, universities, hospitals, et cetera, and then the private sector to contribute. And each of those kind of partners and stakeholders has both land, capital, and then expertise, and in the case of the city, enabling policy to contribute to that effort. And so we want to speak a little bit more about what the city has to contribute to catalyzing that $800 million, right? Because though we saw the cost of those units, it's going to take a catalyzation of about $800 million across all of those three stakeholders, the public sector, the private sector, and the quasi-public sector, to accomplish the goals that we've set. And so I'm going to ask the CFO, Amy Wharton, to come on up and speak. Say what? Yeah, just come on. To come up and speak a bit about what the city's been doing in terms of looking at the resources that may be available.
Hello, everyone. So we were, we met with Naaman and Gianna's team, my team, and we would discuss some potential funding sources to accomplish this goal. I'm going to start on the top right and go right, but general fund, we contribute $300,000 every year to affordable housing from franchise fees. So we discussed the potential of maybe increasing that amount. We also discussed GO bond, depending on our debt capacity, and then also a dedicated bond that would be through a referendum that we could also think about. Existing TIF districts, right now we have about $30 million in the Cooper River Bridge TIF that we could utilize, but there's other TIFs too, as they grow and they get better, that we could utilize more towards affordable housing. And then expanded TIF districts, which does not mean starting new TIFs, but also means extending the current TIFs that we have so that we can utilize those funds for a longer period of time. We also discussed disposition of publicly owned property that the city owns that could be utilized towards affordable housing, density bonuses, tax abatements, and then the transportation sales tax.
These are ideas, guys. I mean, bottom line is, it's fine to have ideas and dreams and goals, but how we're going to pay for it, we need to start penciling out. And you all have heard me say before, but I think, and Eamon made a great point, and I think the graphics show, and it's pretty clear to me that housing issue is a transportation issue. And when it comes up in 26 for the transportation sales tax, we're working with the county, we're encouraging the county, and we're working with the state legislature to allow for sales tax to be an eligible expense, or an eligible expenditure for a sales tax to go towards housing. I think it makes, again, a lot of sense there, particularly if you think about the sales tax. The state gets the overwhelming majority of the current sales tax in South Carolina. And what the state is doing right now, and I'm in full support of, is looking to cut the state income tax. So I think there's a way, this may sound like voodoo economics, but if you actually do the math, it could make sense, I think there's a way to actually have a net decrease in taxes to state residents by decreasing the income tax, but slightly increasing the sales tax, which is a huge portion of it's paid by visitors. And when you just look at what the TST would do for the region, that $300 million is very achievable. So again, still wood to chop on this, still work to be done, but this is an opportunity, I think, that could be very well timed. Let me put it that way. So more to come on it, but when you look at the needs that we have, I mean, it ain't coming out of the general fund. I mean, that's the reality. We can only issue so many general obligation. TIFs are kind of maxed out. We can get creative. If we're going to actually address this, we got to look at creative ways to do it. And I think some form of a sales tax in complement with a income tax cut would be, I think, an appropriate way to go.
Could I just ask whoever's driving the slides to move the little box so we can see all the stuff on the slides? Thank you.
So actually, Gianna is going to talk about that box and how all of this funding will be utilized.
Thank you, Amy. So Gianna's going to come up just now and talk a little bit more about what the city's role would be and how the city would utilize the increase in funding that may come from all these various resources. And I think that's really the big part of this conversation.
So thank you, Naaman and Amy. So naturally, in order, if we're able to secure this funding, again, with our leadership here, I believe that we can accomplish what is before us. But one of the things that we need to give great focus to is resident stabilization. And here on most of our right-hand side, there are various programs, categories, as well as funding sources previously allocated to those areas, and then what is needed to meet the new demand. And I will say to us, as we think about, in particular, rehabilitation, we have more demand than we have money to fulfill those requirements. Often when individuals come to us for what we call a substantial rehab program, we're looking sometimes at in excess of $500,000 for houses. And these are individuals that have lived in their homes for a very long time, but their homes are in disrepair. And so we find that typically we recommend to them a phased approach to getting their homes repaired if they are unable to secure financing, or if the funding that we have available through our federal dollars are not sufficient to cover those. No, 500. Okay, so with that, the program categories: resident stabilization, where we have been currently allocating $869,000. Annual funding needed to meet this goal through 2030. We're on a 5-year goal trajectory here is 1.35. Home ownership opportunities, you heard the number, 400,000. Typically, we're able to stay lower than that because we leave permanent subsidy in those homes. And I think you all have heard me talk about us doing that. And so with that, 1.5 is where we've currently been. We need about 2.8 million. And housing preservation is essentially what I was referring to previously. Housing preservation, conversion, et cetera, 9.2 million. We need 219 million in order to meet the continued goals. Give or take, approximations, but I would just say, that is what we're looking at as far as some of the challenges relative to both building, creating, as well as preserving. And I know that you all recognize that certainly preservation is equally as important as building new.
Just quick, just definition clarification. So resident stabilization is what you were talking about for residents that have homes that are in disrepair, that are at risk of losing their home, or is that something else?
Yeah, that's right. Now I'll add a little bit to what Gianna just said, in that we've categorized the various programs that the city has. City staff has taken taken on a large task of the 9 months of performing an audit of their programs. They looked at what their programs have been doing historically, analyzed where the gaps are, and determined what they need going forward to be able to achieve those goals, both in terms of additional resources and in terms of changes or updates to programs to make them more efficient, but then also new programs that may be needed. And so in each of those categories, there are both existing programs and new programs that are recommended for those dollars to be expended through. And that does include what you mentioned.
So what I would share with council, and you already know this, but publicly owned land offers a huge opportunity for new development. It's one of the most valuable assets that we have. The city of Charleston, well, let me step back. There are approximately 888 publicly owned sites, totaling 5,761 acres. Of those, 29 sites are owned by the city of Charleston that could be used for affordable housing. These sites represent 74 acres with an estimated value of over $100 million and could potentially result in the creation of up to 4,000 or more units. I would say to us, in the past, when we started our first-time home ownership initiative back in 2004, 2006, we found that there were some properties that were difficult to develop, and they were prohibitions to getting those houses redone or redeveloped for the intended population. That was under Mayor Riley's administration. We sold some of those houses, and we took the money from those sales, we put it in a fund to create additional housing. Some of it was rehab, some of it was new construction, but it was very important to us advancing the opportunity under the home ownership initiative. And so we have that same opportunity here with publicly owned land. Again, these are recommendations and suggestions. All of these things would be evaluated more specifically and strategically, but there is that opportunity as well to have those units, an additional 4,000 units available to us. The city, of course, as you all know, because I tend to ask you all for money all the time, play an important role in supporting investment by other institutions. The quasi-public sector is posed to play a huge role. We've been talking to them. The mayor's been talking to them, but the city will need to help to enable that. We have been meeting with very often the Charleston Housing Authority, who is here tonight as well in support of this. The Housing Authority has over 2,600 existing units, and I know Art will correct us if we get that wrong. 16 active sites, and 4 sites are currently in the planning process for redevelopment. There's a potential to add 2,000 to 2,500 additional units as part of the redevelopment on infill lots that the Housing Authority owns. So we're thrilled to have them as partners. Coastal Community Foundation is another group that we have been meeting with. The city can support capacity building of programs already funded by CCF. And we have, as I indicated, been in conversation with Darren Goss and his team. There is a potential for creating impact funds. Again, city can invest additional subsidy to create deeper affordability. What that essentially will enable us to do is meet that need at the 50% and a 30% level where it's more difficult to meet. Others, of course, helping us to meet, along with those goals, the workforce housing goals that are equally important to our community. Okay. So as we have always done, we need to continue to do leverage public-private partnerships. We need our private sector to be an active part of making this happen. We cannot do it without them. We've been working very strategically with our nonprofits as well, and we want to continue to do that. But you saw the numbers, you see the need. We need all of our partners involved in meeting this need. And so one example of that is being worked on or evaluated now is through West Edge. There's 9 acres The city is part owner with the MUSC Foundation. And so this is the Horizon TIF district that was formed many years ago. There is an opportunity to build affordable housing here as well. And so again, we don't have to look far. There are opportunities across our community. Peninsula, West Ashley, we've been evaluating the total amount of acreage that the city owns, and I referenced the number specifically for affordable housing. Naturally, that number is larger, but as it relates to affordable, there is opportunity that can be harnessed, and it is up to us to then make the necessary steps to get there.
Compliment to our staff too. They've actually taken a lot of those city-owned properties, created a filter to run them through based on access to public transportation, based on existing zoning, because a high-density development doesn't work on a lot of parts of the city. And I want to be really clear to the public that we're trying to be very thoughtful and strategic about where these things would go, so that, they're welcomed into the community, not a controversial development. And so staff has done a really amazing job of running a model that rates the properties. And it's still a work in progress, but look forward to showing you all that so that when we look at where we can target properties, we'll have some math that will come into play in determining which ones would be the most strategic to go after first to begin with. So turn it back over.
Thank you, Mayor. So our next steps are to continue to explore alternative funding and revenue sources. There's 800 million, which is a huge number, but not impossible. Incorporate findings on the development feasibility into zoning updates. One of the other strategies that we have used throughout this process is looking at the development of certain land, what it costs to do that, what units can be generated as a result of that, and how we incorporate, in addition to affordable market rate as well as attainable housing. Implement the various program recommendations that we have outlined here and the others that we have as a part of these goals, and then develop a strategy for leveraging public and institutional assets for partnerships with the private sector. I think you all heard Naaman mention our various universities and our hospitals. They own land. We've had meetings with a number of them already. They're very interested because they're challenged. Their staff members are driving in. Their staff members are being challenged with the travel to and from work. And so they're looking for options as well, and they're looking for strategies. And so they have been very excited about what we have discussed with them and very open to being a part of improving the process and making a change from where we currently are.
I think that is it from us, and we'll open up for questions and comments, Mr. Mayor.
Mine's more of a comment. First of all, thanks for this deep dive in our housing issues in our city. I haven't seen this in a while, and I think it's going to be very helpful as we move to develop our consolidated plan to submit to HUD. A part of marketing is being consistent. And just as it took us a while for everyone to start saying the Septima Clark Parkway as opposed to the Crosstown, I don't know what that seal is. Now, if we had our Charleston seal, then I'd know immediately that we're talking about Charleston. We need to be consistent. I mean, today I've seen at least 3 different seals, okay? There's only one seal that's the city of Charleston that has been approved by this body. Let's just be consistent. Thanks. Really, really good deep dive. I appreciated it.
Councilmember Bride.
Just to steel man the argument a little bit about, demand is obviously high, no question about that. It's elevating prices across the board, causing all kinds of problems. But, when you chase a supply demand curve that can backfire, especially with potentially with hundreds of millions of dollars of investment trying to increase supply to meet demand. And I know you said somewhere in the brief that it's expected the demand will stay high for a period of time. That's a prediction. That could not be the case. Like the economy could tank. There's the natural, Friedman economics mindset of if things are too expensive, then they turn elsewhere. So the demand can go down naturally in a few years. While in the meantime, we're investing, for kind of a long-term solution. See what I'm saying? We're kind of potentially chasing a supply demand curve that may on its own resolve over time. Does that make sense from what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I think that in maybe 50 years, perhaps when some of the low-lying areas along the entire East Coast are no longer habitable, perhaps people will start moving back to the Rust Belt. But until then, I think we may need to prepare for continued in-migration to some of these Sunbelt areas.
I think it's a hard supply demand curve to really equate to when it comes to real estate. I mean, the argument there could be carried forth that you just wait for Johns Island for everybody to hate it there. Nobody wants to live there anymore. So, because the traffic's so bad, right? And so, we have a responsibility in terms of the public sector to try and keep up with the private sector. And to control it, we have zoning, we have land use policies, we have greenbelt funds that can define where development goes. We have infrastructure allotments that help define where development would go. And we need to be a lot more coordinated about it. We need to be a lot more collaborative about it with the region. Because what you're seeing here, it's all over the place. And it's very clear that all of our well-laid plans are not coming to fruition. They're actually going in the opposite direction. And what we all know and love about this place is eroding. And that is not being one that doesn't want people to come here. I believe we need to be a very welcoming place and to continue to encourage people, good people and companies to come to Charleston. But we have done a miserable job of executing on well-laid plans. And so, we got to take some bold steps. We got a lot of catching up to do. And I think this is just the first step of getting there. But make no mistake about it, it's going to cost money. And we need to be thoughtful about how and where we spend it. We need to be thoughtful about the burden that it would put on our residents. And we need to work with the state to make sure that the net is either neutral or a tax cut to them. And I think that is very achievable.
Oh, that's a question. This might not be reference to this, but is the, Gian might know, is the Long Savannah still on the table? The 6,000 homes there?
Yeah, it is fully entitled. There are a number of tracks that have been laid out. We've actually, and y'all will see all of this, the staff has been working very hard on this regional analysis for the city. We're doing it kind of corridor by corridor. A lot of you all have talked about this, but outlining not only transportation projects, but greenbelt initiatives, stormwater projects, mapping out all entitled properties so we know where the development already is allowed. And maybe what we can do is, if it doesn't make sense to develop those anymore, it's kind of hard to rewind the clock, but for some cases you can do that. For example, on Long Savannah, there's 25 acres that the Charleston County School District had the option on to build a school. They're not going to exercise the option. We have an option to buy it. If we don't buy it, I don't know exactly what it's entitled for, but it could be 500 apartments. So the question becomes, is that the right place to put 500 apartments where there's no public transportation that connects to it, and it's already on a pretty busy corridor? Or are there other places that would be better served to do that? So again, there's going to be a lot of decisions that we as a council are going to have to come up with in terms of regional planning, and it's time to really dig in, and it's going to take a lot of work for sure. Yes.
Second question, you know, to me, I think we in a turmoil because we don't know, even if, so far as government is concerned, even what's going to happen with the money that we receive from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to even assist with a lot of these homes that we try to assist in repairing and giving people so they can stay where they live, stay in place. Because we might not receive nothing so far as I know of. You know, we don't know. There's something up in the air. So if we don't receive those money, and if it's cut dramatically with the home funds and the community development block grant, you know, we're gonna have to find money from someplace else too, to even assist.
Not
with the
sure we can
community.
rely on the federal government. Who was, we had Bowden was up? Bowden and then Tinkler.
So it's sort of a, so I represent Outer West Ashley. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the geography of going through this whole process, but like, you know, Beast Ferry Road area. So it occurs to me as we're talking about this, that the private sector can, you know, either us or the private sector could build the housing. Either way, it's housing, right? We might have slightly different goals, but either way, it's housing. The private sector cannot build a public transportation system. And so in a world where we're going to have limited funds to deal with, I mean, does it make more sense for us to put more energy behind a functioning public transportation system that would allow us to build maybe more dense in Outer West Ashley and not put 1 million more cars on the road?
I think are you asking whether the city should prioritize its resources towards transportation improvements over what? Over.
So I'm just, when when you're thinking about what part of this, you know, because, you know, once we build all the housing, we still don't have the roads to put people on, right? I mean, that's going to be a fundamental tension here. If you know, we put more money behind like a metro system that DC has, or subway that, you know, New York City has, you know, the DC has the luxury of building very dense, you know, just a few miles outside of DC, and, you know, Tyson's Corner is building.
Transit-oriented development.
Right. And they have those options because people have other ways of getting into the city than just, you know, sitting in traffic on the interstate. We don't have that. And it's not really, right, but it's also not exactly on the horizon.
Well, I would say the BRT, I think, is a major initiative that really came out of a regional planning effort that was done in 2006. And in terms of that public transportation, goes right down that spine where everybody's moving out of. So in terms of an incentive to bring people back in, and that's where higher density is, if that infrastructure is there, I think, you know, you can encourage more development in that corridor, which makes a lot of regional sense. So again, it's just that coordination with the different municipalities in the county has been somewhat lacking. And the good news is, and I want to be very clear about this, in every conversation I've had over the past year with other municipalities, with the counties, everybody is on board to work together and roll up their sleeves. And there's no more sandbox. We understand, I think you all understand, that this has gotten to a critical point. So before I let you speak, unless you want to just answer that, we got Tinkler.
Just briefly, and that's not, I wasn't saying that that's not a great project, right? But if you live in Hanahan, it's better than if you live in Outer West Ashley. And I understand the idea that it's going to take, you know, more cars off the road. And so, you know, people can, you know, arguably get there easier. But, you know, for Outer West Ashley, I think, which is, I get asked all the time, why don't we talk about a public transportation system for Outer West Ashley? And it's just, we're not.
So Councilmember Tinkler is allowing me to jump in here. Thank you very much. So just when you talk about LCRT, I think there's a couple of different conversations going on here. What we're being presented with here is how do we build housing that's attainable at different levels, right? And one way to do it is to have live, work, play nodes where transit is a big part of it. Part of LCRT, especially in the front end in the planning process, a good bit of the money is being expended is not just to plan transit, it's to plan what you heard, transit-oriented development, and see what you can do along that corridor. That's a start to answer some of the challenges we have that's been presented here. The next then is to bring transit to other parts of the community, which is the second part of the puzzle. You've got to start somewhere, and that corridor that we've identified for Low Country Rapid Transit, I predict with some certainty, sooner rather than later, you're going to see many of the things that you've seen on this presentation today and more in terms of zoning, opportunity for density, opportunity to build tiered housing that we don't get from our legislature. We have to do it internally with zoning, and that's what transit-oriented development is all about. And we're very sophisticated when it comes to zoning here, and we've got lots of different zoning categories. Other parts of that corridor are not and do not. And so it's a huge opportunity regionally to dig into some of the challenges we've got here, right? And for us to take a lead. So I just don't want that to be lost on that. We are doing some things that I think give us hope short-term in a corridor that really has got some opportunities for density.
You answered the question perfectly.
Councilman Tinkler.
Well, I think this question is related. It's more of a real world practical question. But we talk about the zoning things we can do, and well, what about having privately owned parcels that are large parcels that are on perfect roads for high roads for development and have bus lines along the way? We have property owners that are just not willing to develop. And are there any case studies? You're the consultant. We're paying a lot for you, I know. But if you've seen this in other parts of the country where and I've read articles about just the challenge of trying to get these owners to see that they're sitting on a very valuable project and the city's providing them tons of incentives and they're just not willing to do anything.
Land markets are tough. I'll say that to start. And when you have fewer landholders who have leverage, it makes it even tougher. And so I think that's part of the challenge here. And the markets take a little bit of time to adjust to new scenarios and new economics that are at play. But I think there are some really great examples around the country. I think I'm going to highlight Detroit as one of those. And I think property tax reform is one of the ways in which you can start to incentivize what we call absentee landowners or landowners who do not activate their properties, prime properties that are very valuable, right? And so throughout most of the country, property taxes are assessed on the value of the depreciating asset and not necessarily on the value of the land itself. And so there's a more Georgian, what we call Georgian kind of land value system that looks at taxing the assessed value of the actual underlying land. I think that's probably the best incentive to push those landowners to either sell those properties or make the highest and best use of those properties. I think there are other tools that are available, but I think that is by far the easiest and most straightforward tool.
Look, we're going to have to pull a lot of rabbits out of the hat on this and figuring out creative ways to activate properties in certain areas that we want to target, or that the community wants to target, that the region wants to target, that think that those are good areas. And it just seems to have common sense, right? I think there's going to be a will to get creative on that sort of stuff. But look, guys, a lot of wood to chop on this. I think I want to just, and I'll come to you, Councilman Waring, but I did just want to wrap up and say that these guys have done an amazing job. As you can tell, it's a pretty deep dive. We'll provide you, there's 51 odd slides. Jennifer, or the clerk had a panic attack when she saw the number of slides originally, but a lot of appendices that go with this, so you can have all of the information. And our city staff, John and her department, Tim, all across the board, a lot of people have been leaning in on this. So I want to just give another round of congratulations and thanks for our staff for everything that they've done. So that I'll turn it over. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Give them a round of applause. That, Councilman Waring, turn it back over to you.
Well, I wanted to thank them, and you've done it for the deep dive. But one of the things the deep dive has done is I thought it provided potential solutions. so long we've heard about the need, 16,000 units or whatever the number is, but the how-to of it, every time this region has had a $1 billion need, it tapped sales tax, and it worked. We needed it with education. At one time, we had 77 schools. 76 of them were dilapidated. I'm serious, man. Okay. I defy you to find a dilapidated school in Charleston County right now, because we have spent over the last 15 years $1.4, $1.5 billion in improving that physical plant. And how do we do it? Sales tax. So the mayor's point about incorporating tourism dollars into this housing solution definitely works. When we needed to replace the Ravenel Bridge, which at that time was over a $600 million project, half-cent sales tax came in. Had we put that on the property tax, on the back payers of the property owners, if tax would have been out of this world. You still be on the, that's right, you still be on the Grace Bridge. Half-cent sales tax brought it in under budget and under time, sooner rather than later. So the methodologies on pulling up the 29 parcels that government owns or the city owns, if you want to create affordable housing and a rising real estate market, you have to create a long-term stream of revenue. You can't do that through bonding. I mean, through issuing a $10 million bond like we've done in the past, or I think a $20 million bond we did some other time, and we celebrate. That's not one development. But if you create a stream of revenue that repeats itself, then you'll be able to create the stream of revenue to build the units you need. So I thank the mayor, I thank his team, I think certainly coming down, having this conversation, we would not have had this deeper dive. We still would be chasing a project here, a project there, and not look at it in a comprehensive way. When I looked at that 200 and some odd million that Ms. Shaw Johnson pointed out, listen, we spent $200 million on the September Clark Spring Fishburne Drainage Project. The can-do ability exists right here with the 13 people and staff that we have. That doesn't intimidate me. We've done it before. We spent in this city over $500 million on drainage projects without a half-cent sales tax. So the stream of revenue, 5 years or so, I think it was, whenever we had National League of Cities in Charlotte, they had a workshop on how do you create affordable housing in a rising real estate market. The mayor of Boulder, Colorado, if you heard him speak to the problem there, you swore he was talking about Charleston, South Carolina. The way they did it was with a deed transfer fee. Okay, that's how they did it with it. But again, a repeatable stream of income that comes in every year to help kill the problem. So anyway, whatever we need to do to push in the right direction to get the law changed, hopefully that will allow sales tax revenue to be used towards affordable housing. And we ought to be doing the push on that one. Okay.
Well, we do have a bill that's been filed in the House and the Senate to allow for capital projects to be utilized with the sales tax. So I'm optimistic that that will get passed. We're working on it, but that's why y'all need to come out to Charleston Day and Columbia and twist some arms. So again, guys, I do for the record, and I think this is important to note, these are a lot of ideas that we need to work on and drill down on. There's nothing set here. There's nothing absolute in these numbers, but these are ideas that I think are pointing us in the how to get this accomplished. So just want to make sure that for the record, we're not saying this is definitely happening or that's definitely happening or it's exactly this or exactly that. This is very much a work in progress, but we have sharpened the focus on a very growing need that, as I said earlier, I think is critical to our social, cultural, and economic advancement. So looking forward to working with everybody on this, and I think we're going to have good things to come. So if there's nothing further on this, I'm going to move on to committee reports because there's nothing on communications, our consent agenda. So we have Committee on Ways and Means.
Move for Ribble.
Yeah, right. Move properly seconded. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approval, signify by saying aye. Opposed, ayes have it. We are now on to bills up for second reading. There are 19 items up for second reading. Staff has requested that items M10 and M12 be deferred. Can I get a motion on these? To defer M10 and M12.
The motion, so is the motion to
To
defer
defer.
items M10 and M12?
We'll see.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have that motion properly seconded.
Who was the second? Were you the, okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, ayes have it. Now can I get a motion on?
Second.
So these are all the remaining items except for M10 and M12. The motion is properly seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. M1, okay. Please make note. Which one is that? Oh.
All right.
Okay.
So there is one nay,
There's one nay on M1.
two.
Two.
We have two nays.
All right.
Councilmember Graham and Councilmember Seekings.
Are there no bills up? Huh?
Third reading.
Oh, third reading. So what do I need? I need to forget. I always forget this one, Jennifer.
Shall these bills pass?
Shall these bills pass, the titles thereof be changed to ordinance and be ordered and grossed for ratification? Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Motion moved, properly seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, ayes have it. All right. There are now no first readings. The next regular council meeting will be on Tuesday, March 11th. And I got to sign them in session. So you'll check your emails. Give them blue.
Mr. Mayor, so I put on some of the council members' desks, there's a policy that the council members need to sign before you get your training in the Workday software. If you've already had your training, then you've already signed it, but there should be one on your desk. So if you can sign that, or if you have any questions, just let me know. We can fill that in for you.
Keith, you already heard ours.
Just out of curiosity, the ordinance that requires me to sign this in session, can we change that? The ordinance do you know why I need to sign this in session or where we're in?
I think it's so you can't pocket defer it.
It's a trust thing, huh? Right. Fair enough.
Some more people home.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Oh, no.
What?
I honestly, I probably, it's that I spent 24 years. But, I'll send you.
Okay. So you'll see if you read it. I can't see it. Unlike you.
All right, if there's no further order of business,